Welcome to the February 19th, 2021 meeting of the Windham Southeast School District. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and that is the long form warning draft. So couple of comments, a couple more admissions, and then we'll get started. For this meeting, we're going to read, everyone has had access to, and I hope that the board members in particular had time enough to look through the draft. But I think most of the items, well, there have been some adjustments made reflecting the work that was done on the two-page draft. And I think Ruby has again volunteered to track the changes. So we will go through similarly to the way we did before, but I don't think we'll have to spend as much time reading every article. But we'll see how that goes. But one thing that will be different in this meeting, I tried to be as informal as possible and to allow the conversation to sort of take an organic form. But tonight we'll return to regular order. My responsibility is to make sure that the business gets done, and it gets done in an orderly fashion. So I will insist that people raise their hands if they wish to be recognized, and also control any impetuosity in terms of feeling like you have to say something right away. I'll say again that when we're deliberating on the article and talking about the edits and trying to determine what things mean and what we want them to mean and what we agree on, that will be just the board participation. When we're done with that process, we'll have as long a period of public participation as we need until everyone has had their opportunity to speak and share their view. And then we will vote on whether to approve the document. And after that, at that point, we always have a public comment period for anything that's not on the agenda that people would like to address further. So that's the process. If I need to be really clear, if someone does speak without being recognized, without raising their hand and being recognized, I will offer a warning. If they do it twice, they'll be removed. I insist on that we maintain good order tonight, that we not have conversations between people, not have dialogues between people. This is a school board meeting, and it needs to be done in an orderly fashion. So we will stick closely to, and another thing, I see Sean there, and that reminds me that all comments do need to be addressed to the chair. So please do not address other people in the meeting. Do not respond to things in a personal way where you say, well, I think that Joe said the wrong thing. So that can't happen. You have to address the board. And again, if you don't, I will remind you. And if you do it twice, then you'll be removed. So I think everyone is in. I see Jamie Contois has her hand up. So Jamie, what would you like to say?
I just had a question. At the last meeting, we discussed that the press release that I had created for the withdrawal vote information to go out to the press couldn't go without action. And then we were going to wait to include the school board info session information on it. So with your outline of what the goal of tonight is, I thought we were going to agree on an info session tonight too, and include that in the press release, and then allow me to send that out.
That may come up. Yeah, I suspect it will. Would you lower your hand, please? Thank you. Okay, I will put up the document we're going to be working from. And I also have to undo that for a moment. I paused the recording and I need to restart that. Okay. Now, so here is the, I believe, most recent draft of the long form document. The first page is, again, on the left side, general information about the articles, very similar to the first one. On the right-hand side, information about the vote being held, Brattleboro's informational meeting is later in the month of May. So obviously we can list that, but it won't apply to this document. This outlines the statute, or mentions the statute that talks about forming unified districts, and then the Communications Council, some information about questions, information, and people you can contact. Then if we probably should take a minute to just look at this orange part, and if anybody sees any errors in there, I'm sure it's been looked over several times, but that would be an important thing to not have an error. And I looked at it and didn't see any, but I'm not as familiar with the towns as the members from the towns are. So it looks like we're okay. So Article 1 asks towns to withdraw from the WSESD. Yes vote means that, and no vote means the town remains part. And this is all well known. Important you can vote and vote yes, no on the other, town withdraw. This again, all really well understood, and I think we discussed it effectively. So now it's the financial implications. First, the disclaimer. Budget implications of withdrawing from our unified 4-town merged district cannot be predicted precisely and are subject to voter results and individual community choices made in establishing a new independent school district. And moving on now, I'm going to start, if we can, with just asking if anyone has any comments on this first section. And if people have not, if some board members have not had a chance to read it, we'll pause and I'll read through it, and we'll take our time and we'll make sure that everybody knows what's in here. But are there any sections to this? I'm hoping that everybody can see most of it, and I'll scroll up in a minute and we can see the rest. These are all, not all, but many of the things that we went over on Tuesday pretty effectively. Any comments or questions on this first page? Okay, and we will go to the next one. What will school boards look like? How will they differ, merged versus separate? Again, pretty straightforward factual information. Any comments or changes or questions? Yes, Thomas.
So the part that I noticed on this is that it says 10-person board with representatives from all area towns. I would, let me just get my notes out. So I would think that should be changed to currently a 10-person board, because when we started this, it was an 8-person board with equal representation for each town. So I think that should note in there that it's currently a 10-person board.
I can see that would be a useful clarification. I think that we're talking about it, if everybody remained in the WSESD, what would it look like? And this is what it would look like. There are no changes proposed as part of the warning. So I think it certainly wouldn't hurt to put currently in, but I don't know that it's necessary.
Okay, that's my input.
Great, thank you. Well, certainly if other people agree, please let me know and we'll make the change. I'm not determining everything. It just seems that we're probably okay without that. Michelle.
I was just going to say that the current board makeup was voter approved by voters, right, as articles of agreement. So it would have to be changed through a voting system. So this should be there's nothing like that on the table. So this should be permanent. It's pretty much what you just said, but I had my hand up already. So
yeah. Yeah, the original board of 8 was voted in. I mean, the articles were dictated from the agency of from the State Board of Education, but the voters could have turned it down. I'm not sure what the consequence would be. Would you lower your hand, please, Michelle, so we can So yeah, the voters would have to change this, but certainly if in terms of this article, this vote, this ballot item, it would not affect the board. Kelly Young.
So I don't know if now would be a good time, but as I was thinking about the previous page, and we can go back up to it at some point later if it seems appropriate. But when I was reading, when it's talking about students being tuitioned, I don't know if it's clear. I mean, towns are already paying taxes that pay, so it's not like, I don't know if that's confusing by saying having to pay tuition, that it's, I'm not going to say it's essentially going to be the same amount of money as it is currently. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but it's, I mean, we are currently paying for our students either way. So I would hope that I would like to see a more clarification there if other people also feel that that's a little confusing.
Are you talking, Kelly, about the bullet that's, I hope, in the middle of your screen? Tuition students would not have board representation or ability to vote on the budget of schools outside their school district. Is it that bullet?
No, I was actually looking at the page 2 where it says,
oh, sorry,
outlying towns would pay tuition for their students to attend BAMS and BUHS. I guess I'm trying to, I think people need to, they're trying to make a comparison in order to make a good decision, an informed decision. And so I don't know if by saying paying tuition, I don't know if that, if people think, I mean, I'm sure people understand we are paying taxes and it goes to BUHS and BAMS if it's Guilford. But if other people feel that that is not clear, then I would support some sort of clarification or kind of like rewording things or something. That's all.
Kelly, I just had to admit some people, but I did hear what you said, but I can't find it in the first 2 pages. Could you help me find the language that you're addressing?
Sure. I'm looking at page 2, and let me count the bullet points. 1, 2.
And it's the page that starts with what will school boards look like?
No, what are the financial implications?
Okay, so you're on a different page.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure. You may have a different draft that's in a different order. Oh no, here it is. Okay, financial implications. That is the second page. Thank you. Sorry, I was on the 3rd page. So
and maybe it's something that we want to think about as we go after and just make a determination after we go through it all. I don't know if other people think it's clear enough or if it just doesn't matter or whatever, but that kind of jumped out at me that maybe it might need a little clarification or something.
Well, we want to be clear. And so if you could, again, could you count down the bullets and tell me which one you're referring to?
I am referring to the 3rd from the last on the 2nd page. If the WSESD is dissolved, pending financial
okay, great. Thank you. We've got it.
Thank you.
Yep. So I see further comments. I hope that they'll be on this topic that Kelly raised. I believe Thomas was first.
Just wanted to quickly say that hadn't ever occurred to me, but I can completely see how someone would think that if they hadn't followed the rest of this. So a slight clarification on that to let people know that it's coming out of their normal taxes would be a pretty easy thing to clear up.
Okay, thank you. Michelle?
Yep, I just wanted to point out that this is the exact language that we approved and put on the shorter flyer. And we tried really hard. I mean, we didn't try, it was the plan all along, was to have consistency across the board. So the long flyer is what it was. And then we pulled exact bullet points and used the same wording on the short flyer. And then from there onto the slides. So when we made amendments on the short flyer, we just transitioned them over here because that was the new wording that the board had already approved. And I think the Communication Council would stand behind that. We just felt like it was really important to have the same language and people looking at it. I think it's more confusing if you see different things on different pages. So we just stuck with the same language, and we made very little adjustments based on those amendments. I think we had some stuff on the Career Center we had to fix up, but that is the language that wasn't even originally ours, that the board had already added on to and approved, that we just edited back on this page.
Thank you. Sean? Michelle, would you lower your hand, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that it represents existing conditions, because this is exactly the situation that Vernon has. They pay tuition now to BAMS and BUHS. So it's just part of something that is done.
Would you lower your hand, please, Sean? Thank you.
I will.
I don't see any further questions. I lean to, oh, I do see one now. Go ahead, Liz.
The thing is that, Kelly, is that yes, you pay through your taxes, but the way the state calculates tuition students from an independent school district, it doesn't amount to the same amount of money. So it's probably good to leave this the way it is now. There's a different taxing mechanism on your education taxes.
So I'm not seeing more comments. I think that the agreement from the previous meeting probably indicates that most people aren't too concerned about this. So I'm going to suggest that we leave it as it is, and Thomas and Kelly, when if we get later on along the way and you want to ask again about this or raise a question again, please do, and we'll certainly come back to it. We're not finalizing anything right now. So if that's agreeable, we'll move on to, I think we've done this page now, so we'll move on to what will school boards, look like, which we've already been to. So again, any other comments? Yes, Thomas.
There was just a typo that I saw, and I'm just double checking that it's not in the final version we got, but it was where it says each school would something apportion. It was missing.
On this page?
Yes.
We have that in the live document. Okay. Tim Mason pointed it out. Thank you.
Okay.
Didn't want to make Ruby update every time, but it's in the live.
Please raise your hand, please.
It's probably the original, the one I looked at.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So we'll move on to the next section. How will the Windham Southeast Supervisory Union work, merged versus separate? Any comments or issues with this section? You're not giving me time to drink my coffee. Next one, how do communities engage with the school board, merged or separate? We'll look at the first part of it and then I'll scroll up to the rest of it. Two people. I'm going to let a few more people in while you look. Okay, we'll move along to the next section. Wendy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope this is appropriate. Me being not a board member, but I noticed a small grammatical error. If you could scroll up a little bit, there's a place where I think a hyphen should be, if you don't mind some copy editing.
No, I would do it now instead of later on after we've already posted it.
Yeah. So
nodding her head in gratitude, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
So in the second column, first bullet point, second sentence, I would put a hyphen between in and person, any in-person meeting.
So in there.
Yeah. I'll put my hand down, sorry.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think Ruby probably got that one. Okay, further on this page, again, I see no hands, so I'll continue to scroll. move on to the next one. While I'm scrolling, I just want to recognize again a little in particular that a lot of this came from work that Ruby McAdoo did independently, putting together this document for the Putney Leadership Council and the Putney Informational meeting. And the Communications Council really quickly saw the value of it. And that's when she jumped in and started working as hard as she did in this process. So what would differ in resources available to students and staff in a merged versus a separate district? Any questions on this one? Well, I do have one. On the first bullet, talking about there will be changes in how teachers are contracted. Educators employed by the school district they work for must be contracted separately when employed in multiple regional schools. It's true that there are separate contracts if teachers are employed in one or more of the regional schools. They're contracted for 2 different assignments and 2 different parts of an FTE, a full-time equivalent or a full-time job. So there really won't be changes in how teachers are contracted. All of the teachers are contracted through the supervisory union. So the change in this would not change that contract. I think what is accurate to say is that part-time teachers employed in 2 or more of the regional schools must be contracted separately by each school and are not guaranteed full-time status and benefits. I think that gets to it a little more clearly, but there needs to be some cleanup in there. And Andy, maybe you have an offer of what to do there?
No, they are employed by the individual districts. They're not employed by the supervisory union. So
but the contract is an SU union. It's not. Yeah, it doesn't change based on the districts.
No, it does. The contract covers the SU employees, the SD, and the Vernon employees, and so the contract would cover the 4 towns in Vernon and the SU employees. And so that language in the contract would have to be worked out, but their employer is that school district. So because of that, there are RIF implications that it gets weedy, but there are RIF implications, with the different school district. So reductions in force types of things, yeah.
So the fact that it's the same contract for everyone is not the same as the individual contracts. That's the overriding contract, but the individual ones are separate.
Yes.
Great. Okay, good. Then we don't have to worry about that. Any others in this section? Any other comments? Okay. How will COVID-19 response change our schools merged versus separate? Another disclaimer, this cannot be specifically accounted for as things change daily with regard to COVID-19. Thomas.
So I was looking at this and I feel that this section should not be included because it implies that say that this does go through, that it will be taking effect anytime relatively soon. We would assume that it would be, even if this went through maybe a year until it takes effect, let's hope that COVID is gone by then. But this kind of assumes that, or makes people think that if this passes, we'll immediately be feeling the effects of it. So I don't believe that it's relevant to the question, since hopefully COVID's over by then.
I think that's a really good point. I don't want to any of us to get into speculating about how long this is going to last, or how long we're going to have to take really extreme measures to protect people's safety. Give me a second to let a couple more people in. So I think also that people are really at this point, this is on the front of everyone's mind, and I think they want the reassurance of knowing that whatever happens, they want to know if something did happen and the situation did continue beyond the transition back, or transition to a different governance structure, that that they would be safe. I think in that sense, I think it is probably important to help people understand, or at least to have some clarification. But Kelly and Michelle have comments, so I'll be quiet. Go ahead, Michelle. Sorry.
No, yeah, really what you just nailed it, David. And this, we stretched ourselves to try to get as much community feedback about what people were thinking about, tapped into leadership councils. And this was probably one of the most significant concerns because it's immediately pressing. So we didn't want to speculate that it would be resolved or not, even a year down the road. But we didn't want there seemed to be this misrepresentation that in the event that we're still in this situation, people were afraid they were going to lose funding resources, or they wouldn't be able to, their schools wouldn't be able to offer remote options. So we were really just trying to clarify that, that we'll manage and there's not going to be those types of significant changes. We didn't want that to be a basis for somebody making such an important decision, and wanted to just confirm, that your funding is in place, you're still going to you get those things, and to explain how the teachers work, because that was a big, just a very vocal concern right off the bat. And that's why we put this on here.
Thank you. Andy?
So it's again in the weeds a bit, but the ESSER funds go through, I think, the end of 2023, so part of FY24. And so it does get harder to disentangle some of those funding when you think about group, kind of bulk purchases between districts or kind of collaborative services. And there's a talk of an ESSER 3 that Congress is discussing right now that would go well beyond that. So the funding implications around shared resources would be most likely impacted.
Andy, would you mind? Since you're right there, we've had a couple of requests to explain acronyms now and again, and I think ESSER
is the Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Act.
Thank you. Kelly?
I just wanted to say that I agreed with Thomas, and I wondered if maybe, and maybe I'm missing it, and I know that we referenced it in the shorter form. Maybe if there was something in there that's indicated that even if this, I mean, nobody wants to speculate, I get that, but even if this was the voters agreed to it and one or any of the towns were out, that this is not like it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen on March 5th. It's not going to, I mean, there will be other things that will happen. And so I think that may address some of what Thomas's point may be. And I don't want to speak for him, but, and he can correct me if I'm misunderstanding.
Thomas, would you like to respond?
No, she's correct. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Thank you. Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Andy, do you think that statement then is misrepresented? Do we need to amend it? And I want to get it right. If you have any language, we're open to it.
I think it might get just too weedy. Just something that gets there are complications. Withdrawing just creates complications in using supplemental federal funds. Something about withdrawal. The withdrawal will complicate the distribution of supplemental federal funds.
Great, thanks, Andy. Any other thoughts? Michelle, would you lower your hand, please? And other thoughts on this section? What happens after this vote?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think we've been through this fairly well. Michelle, would you unmute as well? Your humming is wonderful. But
muttering to myself, trying to figure out what that sentence was. Andy.
It sounded like you were humming. Okay. Again, we've been through. This is a lot more information about the essentials of this region of the document that we went over pretty thoroughly on Tuesday. But there's additional stuff here. Anything needs help. Okay, we'll move on to the next. I think we were pretty clear on this. Thomas, or I'm sorry, Sean was first. Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you. I read that over, and so I was just wondering whether a couple of things. Let me just see here. The first word. Oh, where am I here? Oh yeah, we voted. That's sort of a pronoun that doesn't really have a definition to it. I was thinking maybe, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Sean, but I can't see what you're addressing. Is it under the State Board of Education section here?
Yeah, the State Board of Education required us to merge. Can we?
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha.
I was wondering, I mean, when you have a document and you say we, and that is not defined, it's a little confusing for me.
I would offer that this document comes from the Windham Southeast School District, and any pronoun in it would be a plural pronoun referring to us. So I think that could our districts be required? You know, we could add that, but I think the we is all of us because it's all of the districts that are part of our unified district.
Well, could you then put in WSESD instead of we? Because that clarifies it in my mind.
Any other thoughts? I mean, I'm thinking that WSESD, the entities that would be required to merge again would be the local boards. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think
okay. No problem.
Seems fine to me.
I had one more.
Yes, go ahead.
Comment on this same thing. In the next box down, it is not possible to predict the action of the Vermont State Legislature. And I would think that would be the Vermont State Board of Education. Well, and also the next sentence, the Vermont State Board of Education has authority to create and merge and dissolve school districts.
Actually, the State Board of Education gets its authority from the legislature. It doesn't have any, it's an appointed unelected board, and it doesn't have any authority outside of statute. And so it's impossible to predict their actions, but you can be pretty sure that they're going to align with the responsibilities provided by the legislature. So I think that the first part of that, of these two sentences, they both refer to the legislature, and that is where the authority resides. So I think they're accurate. Let's hear from some other voices. Thomas?
Oh, just my last note on this entire thing is the last sentence. So the last sentence says there is no law that allows state-formed districts to withdraw. There's also no law that forbids it. So I would change it to there is no law that allows or forbids.
I would think probably that's absolutely correct. And I think probably the no law that addresses state-formed districts.
That's fine too, but just the way it is, the way it looks there is to somebody who doesn't know the background says, oh, this is illegal.
Is there any objection to changing that to, there's no law, I forgot what you said now. There's no law that
well, I said allows or forbids, but you could change it to addresses state-formed districts withdrawing. You could also say that.
Yeah. Any objections to that? Michelle, Michelle, then Kelly, then Sean, and then Tim. The hands on my screen are getting out of order, so I'm gonna have to write it down. But Michelle and then Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize again, I'm not even picking apart the words that are being used, but just this was the language that the board created together. We worked hard. It took us, I saw the video, it took us almost 20 minutes. And this was the language that was approved and is on all of our other documents. And I highly recommend that we are consistent in our language across the board on all the different information sheets. I don't think that we should be changing language on documents that have already been distributed to the schools.
Thank you. Kelly, and then Tim.
So I want to make 2 points. One of them is I think that this is supposed to be a more more informative than the 2-page. So I think I'm not directing it specifically at this, but I think if we decide that there's anything that we have to kind of put a more detail, or we have to add some wording or rearrange things, I think it's appropriate because this is a longer form than the 2-page. So I think that's, or why would we be doing this? So I think that's appropriate. But that being said, I was reading that last sentence and I wondered if maybe there is no law that addresses the withdrawal of state-formed districts.
All right, well, we've got 2 potential drafts here. I'm gonna, Tim had his hand up, and then Sean, and then I would like us to stop and consider a motion that is explicit. And I would like to start with Thomas's language, and we'll deal with that one first. But since Tim and Sean wanted to have their hands up, we'll do that first. So Tim, go ahead, please.
Well, first I'd like to say that any fine document, like any fine essay or novel, is never ever completely finished. There comes a time when you just have to abandon it. And I think we're close to abandoning this. It's a fine document. Regarding this specific issue, I raised it with Michelle, and I agree with Michelle that the language should be consistent from the short form to the long form. I don't think it's going to really impact the intended purpose of these 2 documents at all.
Thanks, Tim. Sean? You're still muted, Sean.
If I could, I would just like to go back. The top bullet says the Vermont State.
I would ask, would you wait on that, please, Sean, so we can finish with this one that we just addressed?
Oh, yeah, sure.
3 or 4 people in a row. Thank you. Don't keep your hand up so I know you're there, please. Thanks. Okay, so Thomas, do you? I think everybody sees what you're saying, and then there's the question of when editing starts and stops, and consistency across documents. But you had recommended that we change it to there is no law that addresses withdrawal from state-formed districts. I think something to that effect.
Yeah, there were 2 versions. That seems to be more consistent with, you know, like what Kelly said.
Yeah.
So,
would you like to make that in the form?
I would make a motion that we change the last sentence to there is no law that addresses
withdrawal from state-formed districts.
Let me make it from the beginning then. There is no law that addresses the withdrawal of state-formed districts. That's my motion.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Liz. So comments, Michelle?
Yeah, so I cannot express enough that this is the work of the Communication Council, and this is the job that we are on to represent a consistent voice from the board. And that is something that we are trying to, you know, ensure that the people can just have confidence in that. And this is really dismissive of our objective and goals that we have deemed are essential and successfully providing, you know, communications through the district. And I just, it feels very disrespectful to have that discounted, that's a value of a committee that nobody else is on, and that you want to edit our work that we put our heart and souls into. And we already met you, and we worked on this language, and we came to an agreement for 25 minutes. And I think that it would be a very poor decision to break from that. I mean, this is a value that we've adopted to be consistent in our words and our language and one voice coming from the board. And I really think anything that was approved that's already out in the short flyer should stay where it is. And so I really hope the board members think about that, because it's being incredibly disrespectful to our goals and what we're working to obtain.
Thank you. Sean, I think Michelle, I think it's important to not necessarily judge whether someone is being disrespectful or dismissive of the work, and you could contain your comments to the information or the matter at hand rather than make judgments about people's intentions. It would be. I
wasn't making a judgment.
Please wait to be recognized, Michelle.
I was still talking. You talked to me.
Kelly.
Can I just say that I am sorry if it feels that way. I would just like to say that as a board member, I feel that each of our committees, it's our role to create whatever we are tasked with or whatever we take on, and we come to the board with that material. And I believe that everyone is trying in good faith to take the material that has been, obviously there's been a lot of work done, and I appreciate all the work and time and effort that's been put into this. I do feel that it is our responsibility to review it and make sure that it's what the board feels needs to go out. And I believe that we have already done this with other things, such as policy that gets made, etc. So I'm sorry if it feels dismissive.
Michelle?
I actually just left my hand up, but I disagree. And I think I have the right to say how it makes me feel. That's not a judgment on somebody else. I've never seen anyone else have their work presented by somebody else. And I've never seen anyone challenged on the work they produce. It's just a communication council thing, I guess. And would hope that people would want to heed our advice, since we are the ones who are overseeing the communications for this district.
Thank you. Kelly?
I'll just say there was a very large discussion on the climate crisis task force, their document, and I believe that may still be, we're waiting for it to come back from the policy committee. So I don't think that us reviewing things and making changes, I hope that it's not taken personally, and really we are trying to do what we need to do for the communities.
Michelle, Kelly, lower your hand, please.
Yeah, I just want to point out that I have worked with you guys on editing. I have no problem with working through this together. I'm specifically talking about words that were already approved by this board and are now being distributed. If this was something that should have been considered, it's too bad the board didn't look at that other one ahead of time. And, and we could have worked together. It was a long night, but this was the product of the entire board working together. This was a statement that Kelly, you and I created this statement together. And this was already the words that the board approved. This isn't a comment on something that just we're offering to you. This was board approved, these exact language, and it's been distributed across our district because it's the language that specifically you and I created together. So that's really where I'm struggling, is that we're going to change language, and that really violates our efforts when it's already specific language that's been fully approved unanimously by this board 3 days ago.
Kelly, one more, and then I think we'll end the dialogue unless it's necessary to continue, and we'll have a vote on the amendment.
Well, I'll just say I'm a little confused then why we're doing this longer form if we didn't expect there to be some differences between. I'm saying if this is supposed to be a longer thing that's fleshed out, I don't understand why it's expected that there wouldn't be some differences in some wording. So I'm sorry about that.
Any other comments from other members of the board before I go back to Michelle? Go ahead, Michelle. We'll do one more round of dialogue here and then we'll.
I just wanted to respond to what you said, Kelly. It's not, this is a longer version, but the bullets, each bullet is solid. If we wanted to make changes throughout this document, I was totally ready to just, to listen to feedback and see where we could do better. But when we take something that's been approved and that's a standalone thing and just change a few words to give it a slightly different meaning or a slightly different impact, I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think it's misrepresentative, and I think it just, questions our consistency in our voice, and it's a standard that I would want to implement, not just on this, but any of the work through the Communication Council, and I hope for the entire board as a whole too. So that's why I'm struggling with specifically adding words to a board created and approved, unanimously approved, statement. It's not changing words in something we haven't seen before. And if somebody wanted to make adjustments to ones we had approved the other day, that came up, and I said the same thing. It's very important to our community that we have a consistent voice. And I would hope that you would all value that. Thank you.
Kelly and then Thomas.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to take my hand down, but thank you, David, for the opportunity to have a little bit of clarification.
Sure. Thomas.
I just wanted to quickly say that to me, the distinction is is pretty significant, that it gives the impression as it is now, as it is listed now, that it could be illegal what we're talking about, and that's not the case. But I also want to say that I recognize the feeling of having a document you've worked on a long time being cut up, like Kelly said, with the climate crisis document that took us a year to come up with, still hasn't been taken up and has been partially edited.
Thank you, Thomas. So seeing no other comments, we'll ask for vote. I think we're going to probably have to record the votes here. So I'll start with, I'll start with, start in the north with Putney. Liz, please indicate if you agree with the amendment of the statement, the sentence to say there is no law that addresses State Farm District withdrawal.
I'll abstain. I'll abstain, David.
Okay, Liz abstain. Anne?
I abstain.
Thomas?
Yes.
Michelle?
No.
Sean?
No.
Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, Tim?
Abstain.
And Jackie?
No.
And okay, so we have 2 yays, 1, 2, 3 no's, and 1, 2, 3 abstentions. So the motion does not requiring tonight a majority of 5. The motion is not passed. So moving on to questions about this resource.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I have the motion correctly, because what I wrote down was slightly different from what you read.
Okay. Would you read? Great, read it and we'll see. Sure.
The motion, which was made by Thomas, was to change the sentence to, there is no law that addresses the withdrawal of state-formed districts.
Okay, I did read it incorrectly.
Do I have it correctly?
You have it correctly.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next page, there is no next page. We're done? One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We are done for the moment. So any comments from the public? I would like to ask the public to please keep their comments to the articles that we are discussing, not comment necessarily on the process or any individual comments that board members might have made. And also a reminder for people that came in late, regular order of school district and municipal buildings and or meetings and any organization governed by Robert's rules requires that people raise their hand to be recognized. And I'm going to strictly enforce that rule. If you wish to speak, you must raise your hand and wait to be recognized. If you don't, if you blurt out something without being recognized, I will remind you of the Roberts rule, and if it happens a second time, then you'll be removed from the meeting. So I just want to be really clear that we're going to stay with regular order tonight. So this is now the time for the public. Michelle, you're welcome to comment, but it is the public's time.
I was just going to ask if we wanted to pass the press release and the board info thing before we went into public comment.
No, I think we should come back to that. We should get this finished first. So we have this document that we know we want to put out.
Thank you.
Ruby.
I'm not sure. Ruby McAdoo from Putney. On the first page, I just want to call attention to the fact that there is this issue of there not being a Brattleboro info session listed. I think that it's really important that there be some opportunity for, or at least a space for Brattleboro residents to discuss the questions they have, particularly about this resource and the questions that come up around this vote. And so I realize that there's going to be conversation with the board about what info sessions could be, but because it's relevant to your approval of this form, I think it would be a problem not to have some identified space for Brattleboro to discuss this.
Thank you for pointing that out, Ruby. And I think that, and please, if I don't remember when we get to it, I hope you'll remind me again. If we do approve it and if we approve it, we can approve it and with the understanding that if there is a Brattleboro public information meeting, and I'm pretty confident there is because we do have an opportunity that I hadn't thought of, that we hadn't considered previously, that we will add that to the document. So it's a conditional approval because we know we need to add that. Thank you. Janie. Ruby, please lower your hand.
I just wanted to share that I had double checked all that data on that section and it's accurate. The Brattleboro section should read, there is no scheduled info session on these two articles, and say it specifically to the two articles, and then create a second, or what is it, fifth bullet point that talks about our info session when we get to that point. And then the only other thing I wanted to say was just that it was really important to me to hear the conversation that happened. And I was sad I couldn't participate as a member of the public before the vote happened on the discussion about the relevance of the law, just because I thought it was a good conversation. And I was really grateful just to Thomas and Kelly and others for raising that conversation and having it. So thank you for doing that. And I think it's an important point to make.
Thank you, Jamie. Other comments on the article from the public? Jamie, would you lower your hand, please? Kelly.
I just wondered if maybe if Brattleboro doesn't have an info session, if maybe Brattleboro residents can be encouraged to participate in the other towns' info sessions?
We certainly could do that. I think we have a better solution in mind, but at least there wasn't a brief, small email conversation this afternoon or morning that opened a possibility. Sean, I'm going to go to Bethany Ranquist because this is the public time. Thank you. Bethany?
Hi, I just wanted to follow up to what was just said about that. As a Brattleboro resident, I feel that, and I know you just said that there might be a possibility, but I just want to put out there that I absolutely do not feel like I should have to go to another town for an info session in order to get information about a ballot question that is on my town's ballot. So I know you said that, David, but I just also want to put out there that as a Brattleboro resident, I do not feel okay that that would be my only option. So I really do want to push that there has to be an info session because it's not fair to the voters not to. Thank you.
That is certainly a reasonable point. Thanks. Would you lower your hand, please, Bethany? Any other questions or comments from the public? Well, I see no reason to delay then a vote on the document with the understanding that we will add the information about the school district information meeting, which we will certainly offer, which will offer an opportunity for Brattleboro voters to come and participate. So I think we'll try a voice vote since we did well the last time. Could I have a motion, please, to approve the long form informational flyer as presented?
So moved. Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Thomas. Moved by Sean Murphy, seconded by Thomas Nolan to approve the long form informational flyer as presented. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. So that work is done. So now we have two other questions. Let's do that, the informational meeting first. There was a suggestion, since we will be gathered on Tuesday for our budget information meeting, which historically, and this is similar to the legislature, you really can't predict what's going to happen at a budget meeting. But historically, they have been brief. Excellent understanding of tax policy. And so anyway, it seems like we could, I think it's probably too late to change the agenda, but we could certainly have a press release and other disbursement of information saying that after the budget meeting, or once the budget meeting is complete, that the board will be available for inquiries and to provide information to the public about the upcoming town articles on the town ballots. So that's, I think that's the option. I don't see Andy's hand up, so I think that indicates that it's possible. So is there, I don't know if we need to, I think it's, I mean, to me it's the only option because there are other meetings every other night, except the Friday night, and by then it's way too late. So I'm thinking that I'll just ask for a motion in a second and we'll have a vote and maybe be done with it. So is there a motion to issue a press release to the effect that the WSESD will be available immediately after the budget meeting on the same Zoom link to inform the public about the withdrawal, the district withdrawal items? We'll clean that up. Wendy will clean that up for me. But that's the gist of it.
So moved.
Offer that motion?
Second.
I didn't hear the first one. Who?
Oh, I moved.
And that was Kelly?
JC.
Jackie.
Jackie.
Okay, I'm still not. I should have made. I think Jackie seconded it. Is that correct?
I moved and Michelle seconded.
Okay, moved by Jackie Reynolds, seconded by Michelle Green to distribute a press release to the effect that we will be discussing, we will have an informational meeting after the budget meeting on Tuesday, February 23rd. And I think we know I'm gonna ask Wendy to read that back so we know the motion, but I'll let our press release, Jamie and anybody that might want to work with her, work out the exact details of what the release would say. But I'm happy to help.
You want me to read that back, Mr. Chair?
Let's hear some comments first. It's moved and seconded.
Okay.
Now,
Sure.
Tim's ready to talk. Thanks, Wendy. Tim?
I just have a question. Does anybody know when the debate is for the select board candidates?
I think it's.
I do.
I think it's Tuesday.
Same time?
I'm not. I think it starts when our meeting. I think it starts at 6. I'm not positive. I looked at it and I said, "Oh, there's another conflict." So I think that's it, but I don't know for sure.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Wendy.
It is the 23rd, the select board candidates meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, would you read it back, Wendy, please?
Sure, yeah, because I'm unclear on the final word, so I'll let you know what I have. So it's a motion by Jackie to issue a press release that the WSESD will be available, or sorry, board will be available immediately after the budget meeting using the same Zoom link to inform the public on the, what is it, withdrawal items, withdrawal articles?
The school district withdrawal articles.
Okay. All right, do you want me to read it back again?
That'd be great, thank you.
Sure, okay. So the motion is by Jackie to issue a press release that the WSESD board will be available immediately after the budget meeting using the same Zoom link to inform the public on the school district withdrawal articles, and it was seconded by Michelle.
And I think that using the same Zoom link should probably be highlighted and turned into a link so that people can just click on it and get there. But yeah, that's great. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and that is passed. Do we have additional business? I think, Michelle, you mentioned one more. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, can we do an executive session tonight?
Sure. Yeah.
Short one. I'm not sure if we could do it with a special meeting or not.
Yeah, it wasn't. I think that an executive session is always in order. It doesn't necessarily have to be warned.
All righty.
Great, thanks. Michelle.
Yeah, I think we just covered both of them with the press release because it was the press release and then the info session. And so we'll work on publicizing that.
Andy, would you lower your hand, please? Thank you. So then our business is finished. We'll move into public comment on items not on the agenda. Again, please raise your hand and I will recognize you immediately. Seeing none, oh, Emily Hartz. Emily, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for having me, Emily Hartz Guilford. I wanted to express my gratitude for your energy to keep consistent language going out in both documents. And I'm wondering, that reminds me of a topic that came up at the last meeting, which was Thomas's letter in the Dummerston.
Emily, I'm gonna say that is the board is aware of the concern and we will address it in due course. And I would rather you not address anything personally related to board members or anyone else for that matter, please. Thank you. Bethany?
So I have two things. First is I am wondering if you could answer in very, very clear, very specific terms how and in exactly which ways this specific form will be distributed to the public. I think there was some confusion about that with the last one. And so if we could know the exact places that it will go and how it will be distributed, that would be fantastic. And then my second one is just per what you were just saying, I'm wondering if we aren't allowed to address the board about concerns that we have regarding the board, how do we address those? Just so that we all are aware, like, where would we take that concern and how would we address a concern like that?
Yeah, send the information to me, and I will share it with the board, and we will take it up. Thank you. And I think I'm going to ask, because I know the list is long, and I also know that Jamie pretty much created a good deal of it, and can also speak to the outlets that the district uses through Barb Nowakowski. Jamie, could you give as comprehensive a report on how we distribute these things? Is Jamie still here? Yeah. Jamie, you're muted if you're still present. Oh, there she is. Great. Thank you.
I just ran out to help the plow guy. Are you asking me a question?
Yeah, sorry. It was a question about concern about how the first flyer was distributed, and but not necessarily to be addressed, but to address as much detail as possible. Where do these things go and how do they get there?
Meaning the media list and how does it go out?
Yes, and the also the source or the places that Barb sends it.
Yeah, so what happened when we formed the Communications Council for the Windham Southeast School District was Barb at central office and I created what we call a media list. And it includes all of the school administrators, including folks in the SU and Vernon. And then it's principals and administrative assistants, or whatever the title of folks who run the offices are called. And then it's the media. And so my primary goal is to get it to the Commons and the Reformer. And then we have a list of, I think, 4 radio stations that include PSAs. And then Vermont Digger, we consider a statewide paper. And then I also do all the town clerks. So for the school budget vote, I sent it to, I'm kind of in charge of the media and Barb's in charge of all the school folks. And so I sent the short form flyer. Is that the question?
No, well, the question isn't so much where you send it as where the long form one is going to go.
Oh, so I'll do the same thing. Barb and I will I don't see how anything can happen. I mean, if folks ask me to, I can stay up late tonight and figure out how to get it to the media. I'm trying to think of who would use it with how papers are formed. And my thought was the biggest push is going to be Monday morning. So if folks have some specific requests, and then I'm sure, the Communications Council Facebook team does a great job. I don't get involved with social media as much as I get into traditional, old school media. That's more my style.
Yeah,
the other members of the Communication Council who do all the new age stuff.
If you, I don't want you to stay up late at night, but if you could draft that and send it to the Communications Council, then they could start getting it out to that network on the weekend. And Barb will get it to all the formal sources on Monday. But if we could have draft language that could be distributed quickly, that would be good, because Tuesday is close.
So my 3-year-old just ran up and hollered while you were saying that. You said for me to send it to who?
To the Communications Council.
The press release?
If you could draft the press release about the informational meeting.
The press release was drafted a week ago. It's ready to go.
Okay, just needed the date on it, right?
It needs the info session date for,
okay.
And so I'll add what sounds like Tuesday night to it.
Yep, that's correct.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
That's okay. I also want to just mention that I talked with Andy yesterday and Barb, and we've purchased a full page ad in the Commons and the Reformer for the short form flyer. So that also will be going. I'm not sure when the Reformer will put it down. Obviously, the Commons comes on Wednesday. So that's part of the distribution as well. Next, I think, was Mary McL.
Yeah.
which means that Brattleboro voters need to make a decision about which they attend. And I feel as if that's not in all of our best interests. And so I have a real concern with that.
Thank you. Tosha?
Hi, Tasha Tillman, Guilford. Zooming out, just more of a general question. My understanding is that these articles were brought based on community member concern. Could we have any more specificity about, like, did those community members ask to be anonymous? I'm just seeking specificity about how the genesis of this being brought to the board. Thank you.
As much as I can tell you is that there were board members and members of the public that contacted me over a period of well over a month and asked for it to be on the board, on our warning. And we waited for a month before we finally looked into how we would go about doing it, and we put it on. As far as the individuals, I'm not going to tell you, and I don't understand why you would want to know. Jackie, I think, is next.
Hi, thanks. I just raised my hand because I don't think Bethany's second question got addressed. But I see your hand still up, so there's probably no reason for me to mention it.
Okay. Jamie?
I wonder if I should add a section to the press release that specifically mentioned that recordings of this will be on BCTV, that the info session recording will be on BCTV as a way to somewhat address the concern.
Yes. Brilliant. Thank you. And Bethany?
Me again. Hi. So I also am concerned about the candidates forum, but I wanted to put in the request that, along with sending out all the forms, that the long form, just like the short form, my understanding is now being included in communication with parents at the schools. I'd like to request that the long form be sent out via all schools or the superintendent's office to all parents that have email addresses available with the schools, and also posted on any Facebook pages for the schools so that all parents are actually able to see the information and have it accessed as readily as possible. Also, I want to also, and I apologize if this feels repetitive or whatever, but I do want to say that as a member of the public and as a resident of the town, I understand if there are community members who bring concerns to the board and that needs to be kept confidential. I can understand that, but my concern is that if there are board members who brought this as a concern, I feel very, very strongly, and I'm guessing I'm not the only one, that we as the public who elect the officials to the board have a right to know what board members pushed this to the board and bypassed the petitioning process, because as an elected board member, we have a right to know what our board members' motives are, especially because this is such an issue that people are really questioning what the motivation of the board was. I feel very strongly that we as the public deserve to know who the board members are that brought this as a concern.
There are 2 points there. One is I want to check with Andy. Andy, is it possible to get, I guess it would be possible maybe on Monday, to get emails out, to get the long form emailed out to parents and principals to put on their web pages?
Yeah, I'm in at least the afternoon on Monday, so I can get it out.
Okay, great. And the second question, the board members don't push things to be on the agenda. They ask for them to be on the agenda, and that is part of their authority. And I will check and see about whether we have to reveal their identity or not. And again, I don't really understand why it's necessary to have that information, but I will check and see if it is available. Board members don't bypass the petitioning process. The petitioning process is for the public if the board does not agree to a request to put something on the agenda. But I can say again, and I'll say this as many times as I need to, I do not turn people away unless it's really not the business of the board. And I brought that to the board discussed it on the agenda and agreed that we wanted to give the public another chance to vote. And that's really, I think, as much as needs to be said, but I will check and see. And if it's necessary to reveal the board members' names, then I will do that. But again, I feel like there's a persecution complex going on here and it's really troubling me. Alicia.
So in an effort to move away from some of what you're describing in the interest of being respectful of that, I guess maybe if it could be clarified, if there are board members that are willing to speak to why they voted that the I mean, were our kids in this formation and the schools being merged, are our kids who are really kind of the human cost of this at the end of the day? I mean, are they in desperate need of this escape? I'm not really sure. I've heard wording and I read wording in recent press releases that offer, you know, language that sounds that this was very to like write a vote of Act 46 as opposed to making a new pathway here for our kids and not going backwards in a completely different landscape than what we had when this was initially passed, that we would need to form a merged district. So is there anyone that can give some clarification so that people would feel more confident and comfortable with what was going on, that now in this landscape that we're currently in, and not going back to Act 46, what was going on that provided, I mean, were there efficiency and operational issues that we're not benefiting from, or are there, I mean, is there anything there that somebody could offer?
Alicia, I would refer you to, I believe it was the January 19th meeting, but it might have been January 5th, when the board discussed the motion. And there was a pretty comprehensive conversation, and everybody said what they thought. So I think that will give you as much information as is available. Tasha. Alicia, would you lower your hand, please?
Thank you. Just to clarify a little bit, David, about where, at least for me personally, this line of this curiosity comes from. At the Guilford pre-town meeting, which was, I would subjectively say, pretty well attended. I think there were 80 some people on the Zoom. We tried to elicit some response, some representative to be able to speak for in favor of these amendments, and that nobody would step up to the plate for that. And whether they didn't feel comfortable or whether there was general confusion about why is this even happening, and can we please have someone that would speak in favor so you could help us understand, and nobody spoke to it. So it's just understanding the genesis of it would really be illuminating and help us all understand how we got to where we are right now.
Thank you. Kelly?
So I'll say that this did not come from me, but when I was made aware that this was something that was maybe a loophole, and maybe the loophole may be going away, but it was an opportunity. I felt like, and I said this last night at the Guilford pre-town meeting, I felt if the school board here made the decision not to make this available to the voters, that would be inappropriate for us to be making that decision that the voters should not have that opportunity to vote yes or no. It was not appropriate for us to make that decision. That's why I voted to include it on there for the voters to make the decision, not us school board members. And I did not, I tried very hard not to speak for or against it last night, because honestly, I see positives in both. And so I don't feel I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to make personal commentary on whether I support or don't support either position. I just hope the voters feel informed after, I hope that we're able to provide enough information for to the voters, and that they're able to feel confident in the decision that they make.
Thank you, Kelly. Jamie?
I wanted to just share that I was on the Putney Central School Board when the state told us we had to merge. In 2017, I remember writing a very lengthy report to the state, or whatever we were asked to do as parents. I had a very little one at the time, so I was a little out of my element, to be honest. And I remember writing my concerns about having such a large district. For those of us who've moved in from other places, that will seem comical, but large in the state of Vermont. And so what I have experienced in these years is a loss of that school-based space where we had 5 school board members that used to be able to have conversations with our principals and hear reports twice a month. And so there's some really tangible experiences. And so when there was discussion about a very quick turnaround in this legislative cycle of things changing, there's been discussion about, well, what does that mean? I'm remote schooling 2 kids and I'm exhausted and stressed out. So I'm having a lot of compassion for what I'm hearing from others about this moment. I've reached out to our teachers at PCS and asked them how they're doing. So I feel like I just wanted to share that if folks wanted to find me on Facebook, I don't know how else to do it, but my name's Jamie Comtois, and you can find me and you can private message me if you wanna hear. I don't wanna take our collective time, but I've had some personal experiences that, especially watching the towns, each one of our towns vote predominantly to not merge and then have the state merge us. I just want to end with saying that I've seen a lot of really good things happen from the merger, and I would never discount people's positive experiences of the merger. I just have seen what the consequences have been for us in Putney, and would offer to talk at length to folks who would like to have that conversation.
Thank you, Jamie. Tasha.
Thanks again. While I certainly appreciate and have heard Kelly explain her perspective and justification for wanting, to have do her due diligence and bring the vote to the people. For me personally, the way I'm framing it, it's if I were to offer my kids a choice between ice cream or escargot, they don't have any frame of knowledge for understanding what escargot is. And if they choose it because they think it sounds cool, they might be really disappointed with how it tastes.
Yeah, right.
So if you have no frame of, speaking to Jamie, the last speaker, we are all, those with young children are very low on many tanks, and it just feels like impossible. I have a hard enough time like standing in the cereal aisle and picking a cereal, nevertheless making consequential choices because of how much variability and high stakes are in all of our lives right now. So it just doesn't feel like the moment to bring this. And that's not to say that there couldn't be a future moment to consider, but it just doesn't feel respectful or right to give someone a choice that they have no ability to actually make for themselves, or minimal ability, not no ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy? Tasha,
Hi there.
please raise your hand. I'm sorry,
Hi.
Tammy, go ahead.
Hi there. Tammy McNamara, Demerston. I really appreciate what Tasha just said, and I know that I did speak at the last meeting, and I don't have a strong argument for or against this vote, except for the timing of it and the process of it is still quite bothersome to me. I'm a volunteer member of the school's leadership council, and I actually sent a letter to you guys, to all the school board members, that I hope you received via email, that was signed by some other leadership council volunteers. And, there's an overwhelming feeling of, we're putting in time and we are hoping to have a good relationship with the school board, but we're also hoping to be heard and to be asked about very important decisions that impact our schools and our children. And at the end of the day, our schools and our children are the people who are going to face the outcome of a vote like this. And I don't feel like our voices were heard at all. And I do hope that going forward, the board will remedy that. Thank you for your time.
Tammy, I was really, I can't tell you how pleased I was to receive that email, because the effort, and I'm going to get a good night's sleep before I write. I read it just before the meeting, and I didn't have time to respond, but I'm going to get a good night's sleep and then send an extensive response, because there's nothing that this board has undertaken in the 2 years that we've been in place that's as important as leadership councils. And it's something that I have brought up several times regularly, and almost every meeting. And we've clarified the meaning, we've talked about the meaning, we've got what's supposed to be happening. It's been a gradual process, but the purpose of that was to make up for the missing 25 board members that would basically represent the voice of the communities that were lost when we were forced to merge. We put those councils, the study committee that recommended Act 46 had a leadership council language in there. The School Boards Association had developed some. The Agency of Education sent some out very late in the game, realizing that people wanted to have some way of including all the voices. And we worked on that, refined that when in the Alternative Governance Proposal Committee, the proposal that was rejected by the State Board. And then when we became a board, we took it to the policy committee and went over it again and again and again and refined it to the point where it is now. And we put it in front of the voters last spring, and it was overwhelmingly approved. And this is the thing that we are committed to more than anything, is to have a place where all the stakeholders in this community, in these school communities, can sit down and talk about important issues. It's not a PTO, it's not a social gathering, it's not about fundraising and selling cupcakes. It's about the operation of the schools, the business of the schools, the issues facing the schools, the issues facing parents, teachers, principals, and the board, and other community members. And that's why all those people are involved in that process. And it's been a slow unfolding, but we are at the point where they are all in place. Some of them have only met a few times, but they are getting their feet under them. And that is exactly what that's intended for. And I will send you a comprehensive response about the importance of leadership councils. So thank you. Ellen?
Hi, thank you. I like what you just said, and I think it would be great if the relationship between the board and the leadership councils was maybe fleshed out a little bit, because this does seem like the perfect opportunity. This issue seems like it would have been the perfect opportunity to reach out to leadership councils and ask their opinion maybe before even putting this on the ballot. Or, you know, in getting the select boards involved with putting it on the ballot. So if that relationship was more formalized, I think it would be helpful for all of us.
Thank you. Another thing that's been on the agenda for a couple of months now is a leadership council summit to basically get representatives together to kind of coordinate and share experiences and address exactly what you just said, Ellen. Thank you. Bethany? Oh, and Ellen, would you lower your hand, please?
Hi, I had a question and a comment. So my question is, and I think I have a sense of it, but I just want to ask because I'm not the only person on this call. I'm wondering how much, if at all, the leadership counselors were considered or asked about this measure before it was done. Like if they were reached out to, whether their information, whether their perspectives were gotten, what their thoughts were, whether they had a chance to talk to other people within their school communities, because I hear what you're saying about the importance of them, and I fully agree. And I, as Ellen was saying, I think this was a perfect opportunity for them to have their space, to have that, that role. So I'm just wondering what outreach to them happened, if any, specifically which leadership councils might have had a say in it. And then my other thing is, I just wanted to go back just for a minute, David, and let you know that it sounded like you were concerned that you said something about a persecution complex or something, but what I wanted to, my comment that I wanted to say on that is that I think that there's concern about how quickly this went onto the ballot with very little education for the voters, that we're looking at, just a little over a week until voting is done, and people have already been voting before they even got information about this. And so I think the concern is that this came up very suddenly on something that we now know is not the timeline that, that it was acted on. So I understand the board thought they were acting in good faith, but there wasn't information before. The information wasn't gathered until afterwards. And so the vote that took place to put this on the ballot was not, there wasn't the rush, and I think there wasn't the step back that needed to be taken. And so I think now, as voters and as residents who are looking at a potential fundamental change in our education in the town, we're concerned about this coming up so quickly with virtually no education of the public in time for them to make an educated vote. So I just want to say that I think that that's why there's such pushback right now, and probably why you're feeling this complex that you were saying that you have. So I just wanted to say that I think that, I think that that's why, because there's not a chance, there hasn't been a chance for education. So, of the voters. So that's my comment, but I also would just like to remind you that I did ask the question about the leadership council. If I could have an answer to that, that'd be great.
Yep, the councils have been unfolding. So the board has not been offering much direction to leadership councils. When this came up, we talked about how they might, what role they might play, how we might ask them to address it. It came up in the communications council a couple of times about what role they would play. It's kind of unclear because there's been some pushback when the board tries to ask them to take up particular topics. And it's, again, this is a forming process. But yeah, and it is the perfect venue for this kind of a conversation to happen. And if we had recognized ahead as earlier than we did that we were going to have to provide information, we would have tried to do it that way. But what we did was shift into high gear and get as much information out as we could. And I just want to point out the first leaders, even though it took until the 2 days after the ballots had been mailed, it took before we had something out in the public. We started on this on January 20th. The Communications Council actually had to postpone their first meeting because of the inauguration, but we started on it a while ago. It just takes a long time, as you see, for the board to come up with language that we can share with the public and not put out inaccurate information or put out the wrong information. And we did, once we realized that we had to do that, we did a great job. And I'm not hearing any of that from anybody, and that's discouraging. But But again, you're absolutely right. The Communications Council are the perfect venue, and that's exactly what will happen the next time something like this comes along. Would you lower your hand, please, Bethany? It's really hard to keep track of who's next. I believe it's Michelle.
Yep, I just wanted to respond to Tammy, and I know you're not the only person that signed that letter. I did have a chance to read it, and I really appreciate that you took the time to really articulate something that I've heard feedback coming through this process of trying to get information. And as David was saying, it's true. This month was actually supposed to be focused on Leadership Council development, and one silver lining I'm just going to offer up is it's really highlighted that it's not just the leadership councils that need development, it's the board needs development on how to work with the communication councils. And, we need to create a structure of a protocol that we follow. And I think what that moment that really just hit me was to read, it was a sentence in your letter that said, to no longer be a WSESD, and one of the many byproducts of that vote would be to abolish the voter-approved leadership councils. And that just struck me so like hard to think about that this board moved that forward. And that would be a byproduct without consulting. And I apologize for that. I had asked at the meeting if we could go back to our leadership councils. I will remember next time to make a motion. I'm still learning, but I just really appreciate this feedback, and I hope we can all work together because I think what Jamie was just saying about having connection to your small board. I mean, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. Is we get our big board and our leadership councils, and we prioritize that relationship over every other agenda item so that we're connected to our schools. And that should be our number one goal, is to be present with each of these schools and to be strategizing how do we represent 10 different schools and have relationships with them and understand our students' needs and our teachers' needs. And I've been really just absorbing so much of that feedback and realizing this is the common denominator, that no matter how you want to vote is the missing piece. And it's just the beginning. This board, I think, has done a really good job. They have to build a foundation to get a board going in a new district. But I really hope that there'll be extra efforts from, not just me on the communication council and some community volunteers, but to really get the board invested in this idea of how we can connect and feel available in the school system and be prioritizing our students and our teachers and using these leadership councils to make sure that we are connected and we do have that feedback that we might not when we're not in the school every other week having our meetings in those gyms. So I thank you guys for reaching out to us and sharing. You're very well respected and appreciated, and I think we're just starting, and there's a lot of potential for growth and some, if we stay together, I think there's just a lot of really healthy potential ahead of us.
Thank you, Michelle. I think that's a really good indication that once this divisive issue is resolved, that this is the leadership councils and protocols and structuring those more effectively is going to be the thing that brings us back together and unites this board nice and solid once again. And I also hope that the members of the leadership council will stay active when there isn't a wildly divisive issue to deal with, just dealing with the day-to-day operations. But thank you, that was an excellent comment. Would you lower your hand, please? Jackie?
Thanks, David. So I certainly couldn't speak for every board member, but I do think I could share a little bit of an anecdote that just might be a little bit helpful for the many folks that I know are still wondering how we got here and why it felt so important to allow people to vote on this. When I was running for a board seat and people found out I was running, I was approached pretty much constantly with voters that wanted to know how I felt about the merger. And I wasn't really around for that, and I didn't have any feelings about it. And they wanted to spend a lot of time explaining their perspective, and people were really passionate, really fired up about it. Many of them really angry about it and really waiting, counting down the days until their chance to reverse this. And unfortunately for them, this doesn't present an opportunity to reverse it. And we're learning that now and getting that information out. And it just, it seemed like, because this was the issue that most people wanted to talk to me about and make sure that I was aware, that there's a lot of just passion and feelings in this community about it. And there are a lot of people that really, we're still really upset about it. And it really did feel like, regardless of my personal feelings and my hope for the outcome, that it wouldn't be doing right by the people that voted for me, who took their time to explain their position and really wanted this opportunity. And I doubt that I'm the only board member who had that experience. It was really overwhelming, and I don't think it could have possibly been avoided without considerable blowback, because people really, it's very important to them. Thanks.
Thank you, Jackie. After, I have to interrupt for a second here. After our third, I think, consecutive 4-hour meeting before last Tuesday, I was asked to not let us go more than an hour without a break, and I missed the hour break. It's been an hour and 43, and there are still several hands up. So I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute break. We'll go quiet and come back at 7:48. Thank you. Okay, we're back. I hope everybody's in their seats again, or if actually, I hope you're standing. But, I believe that Beth Bristol was next, and then Tara Castine.
Thanks, David. I have two points to make. The first, I heard you say earlier that there was some pushback from the leadership councils when engaged previously, and I wanted to offer a distinction. I specifically recall pushback on direction made by the school board, but absolutely never consultation. Secondly, I appreciate hearing that you see the importance of the leadership councils. I think that's fantastic. I did hear you say that this particular issue around the articles that are in front of us now was raised about a month prior to you bringing them to the board, or them being brought to the board. And I'm wondering why during that month, the leadership council and administration and staff were not consulted.
I think I can't really say explicitly. I think probably for the same reason that it took a month for us to actually have time to take it up on the agenda. We just had a lot more to do. And we clearly, I mean, there's no other way to describe the experience, except we had no idea that we were going to have to provide a lot of information. It just didn't dawn on anyone. If anyone is if anyone in the group has never made a mistake, feel free to cast the first stone. But we didn't realize it, and when we did, I think more than doubled down and got the job done as well as anybody ever would have. I also would suggest that there's more information distributed more widely about this issue than probably anything else on the ballot in any of our towns. So, I'm sorry that it happened the way it happened, but at least when you make a mistake, the really important thing after that is what do you do to fix it? And I think that we've been an exemplary example of what you do to fix it. And the fact that we're here again the third time, or the second night this week, and more than that for many of us. So I think that's the best I can say. Beth, would you lower your hand, please? Tara Castine was next.
Hi, thanks, David, for taking my hand. I want to recognize that Jamie and Kelly both raised an opinion I have, is that there's pros and cons both ways, and not having a firm idea of what will happen opens up a lot of possibilities. And I don't think it's an easy road by any term to think about it, but I think it's worth a thought now that it is on the ballot for us. And moving on to the LCs that were being discussed, I would really like to see a rotating schedule of the board members on each LC so that there's an interaction with all board members that represent us. Essentially, since we vote for everyone that's on that board, they should be attending each school's leadership council and getting to know their people that they're representing so that they can represent our voice when we speak. One of the things that I've noticed about this board, and especially these meetings, is that there's a lot of, and I understand they're long meetings, and so there has to be a protocol, but there's a lot of times when you have a vote regarding something and then have public discussion. And that does not allow your board to hear and listen to what your parents, teachers, and people are saying, and doesn't open up that opportunity for the board members to vote accordingly to what people are voicing. And I think that's a real disservice to the members of our community to assume that the people on that board know prior to us voicing something what our thoughts are. And so those are two things I would like to really ask that you as the chair address as you look at leadership councils, and I'm sorry, my dogs are playing, leadership council interactions, and also how the community can have an involvement in these board meetings. And I fully recognize that they're really long. And the third point I would like to ask is that all meetings be held during non-work hours. Most people in our community work 9 to 5. And I know that there's always the opportunity to view the board meetings as a recording, but all of your committee meetings are not recorded. And so the only way to be present is to be present. And some of those are happening during work hours. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Tara. I'm not sure. I think you talked about two things. One is at our regular meetings where we have a business item and the board discusses it. We always, after the board discusses it, we always have public comment and hear from the public well ahead of when we vote. That's always happens. In fact, it's required by law. And I know that I never fail to do it. I may have forgotten once or twice when we got really excited about something, but it's something that happens every single time we have a business item that we're going to be deciding on. So I'm not sure if I don't think you could possibly be referring to that, which means that you're referring to the process of reviewing these articles. And because I had no idea how to go about it, and I knew that if we tried to get everybody involved in helping us edit, that we would not ever get it done. So I adopted the method that was used by the Act 46 study group, the 706B statute design, which is that the board or in that case, the committee takes public comment, works on the documents, does their work, and then takes public comment at the end. And the vote happens after all of that is done. So I'm really not sure. We need to talk. I would suggest you send me an email or something so we can explore that further. One thing I do want to say though, when you said, thank you for taking my hand, and I can't wait until I can actually take your hand. I went to my physical therapist last week, and he had held out his hands for me to balance while I did did a practice exercise. And it was the first human being I've touched other than my wife and my daughter, Molly, in over a year. And it was an astonishing experience, and I can't wait to have it again. So thank you for that. Would you please lower your hand? Now I gotta look at this list and see. I believe that Kelly was next, and then Maggie, and then I think Robin. Well, go ahead, Kelly.
So I want to acknowledge that, of course, the timing on this is really terrible. But Bethany, I would really like to thank you for acknowledging that this has come out of good faith efforts from the board. We all have our own opinion. Some of us are conflicted on things, but this has really come out of good faith efforts. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Gosh, I think Robin, I'm sorry, I lost track, and my participants list doesn't keep people in order. It does it alphabetically.
I think you had said
Maggie and Tasha were both before me.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Tasha, go ahead.
I'll go and then Tasha can go if that's okay, Tasha. I think he had said me next. Kelly,
that would be great.
Thank you.
I'll just add to Bethany's voice, Kelly, to thank you for your service. I think this can get heated, but I think we also all acknowledge all the time and energy that goes into this kind of civic duty and really appreciate it. So as a Guilford resident, I do appreciate the time that you put towards this. And along those lines, David, I don't think that you meant to have the insinuation around a comment around the Leadership Council's work, but I do want to acknowledge that the Leadership Councils have been so instrumental over the past 9 months before this issue came up, that my Leadership Council in Guilford, I'm not a member, but I've watched as they have raised over $50,000 for outdoor learning, and that they're doing the work. They have an entire schedule for the year of what they should be focused on. And they are so organized and so professional and so committed to our school. And I want to thank them. And I don't think that it's fair to think of them as stepping up only when there is a crisis or, you know, an event to complain about, that they really are proactive and a positive force in our schools. I also would say that around the awareness of the vote, I appreciate, David, that you feel like you really turned it around in terms of awareness, but I also would have to credit the Leadership Councils there. I know as of last week, Andy, no knock on you, the newsletter went out and it didn't mention that this vote existed. It mentioned that there was a vote on the budget, but it didn't mention a vote to dissolve our entire district existed 1 week ago. And I assume that was partly because administrators were told not to speak to it unless they were asked. And to me, as a voter, as a parent, that is an incredible communication failure. I appreciate that the Leadership Councils pushed to have the 2-page flyer printed in all the schools and distributed this week, and that the 2-page flyer was included in the electronic communication. So I think that I think they picked up the board's slack around communication in a way and took what the Communication Council approved and got it out to the voters, which I think is essential in this case, and I give them all the credit. So thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. And I think I just want to say that your council, the Guilford Council, is exemplary. It's exactly what we had in mind. And they've met more than, there's some councils that have met maybe 4 times in 2 years. So it's very uneven. And that was really what I was addressing. And the reason that Michelle and others had been really pushing for a summit of leadership councils is because we wanted to get those practices distributed around more broadly. I want to recognize Andy because he was specifically included in that comment.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, Maggie, that this is we didn't mention this for, this was a select board voted item, warrant article. And so it wasn't necessarily in the purview of the school district. While it was brought up at the school board originally, it was brought to the select boards and they put it on their ballots.
I understand that, Andy. It's an uncomfortable game of hot potato. And so that was just my observation. I appreciate that it has been included in school communications because it does apply. So I totally understand your position.
I would be not doing my duty if I wouldn't remind the whoever it was that just spoke to please wait to be recognized, even though it was obviously appropriate time to comment. But I did say at the beginning of the meeting that we would stay with strictly to the regular order of our business. So everybody gave up. Oh no, Robin is still here. Robin?
Hi, yes, and just to add on to what Maggie was saying, for full transparency, I really want to acknowledge the work of the Putney Leadership Council, specifically the long form that was just approved by the board was developed largely by that group. And it was so good that we invited their chair to be part of our council. So that's how that got started. And all of the stuff in the shorter form was what our council really worked on to sort of make a more concise version of the information that was collected by that leadership council and a lot of Michelle's own personal research. So this really was a grassroots effort that came from the leadership councils to get this information out to voters. I also wanted to talk about something different, which is I would like to, this was tabled on the last agenda, But I really wanted to ask again about if we can please not have these meetings be coinciding with the Brattleboro Select Board. There is a lot of really, really important, crucial work that's going on the Brattleboro Select Board right now that I feel really compelled to show up for, as well as the really important stuff that's going on for this board. And it's really unfair that people who live in Brattleboro are not given the opportunity to be engaged with the work of both boards. I feel like it is very exclusionary, and I would really love if this board could find a way to accommodate that.
Yep.
Also,
Robin,
I can ask one question, and then I'll mute myself.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to respond, but go ahead.
This is one other question I'm just going to add on, even though it's not related, but then you can discuss each as needed. But I wanted to know if the board wishes to have the information from the short form posted in the Facebook slide format.
I think I'd rather leave it in the short form. It's just scrolling down through 2 pages. And I did contact all the board members, and then they checked with their schedules and the schedules of leadership councils and other board activities, and we weren't able to get everybody to come on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. That may change in July, which is a little bit late for people that want to be engaged in both in the business of both boards, but we need to be able to meet when everybody can be here. So we will keep looking at it, and we will try to adjust that. So thank you. Would you lower your hand, please, Robin? The board needs to have an executive session. I think Andy said brief. So if there are no further, one further comment, Julianne?
Hi there. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the work from the Communications Council, and also ask at those information sessions, who will be able to answer questions that the public has? We'll
all be there.
You all will. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I need a motion to enter executive session at 8:03, and I would ask everyone else to please exit the meeting as quickly as you can. We won't be taking any action, and I don't think, no, Andy shakes his head no, so we won't. So we'll wait a minute or two for the executive session while people go away. Ask for a motion to adjourn.
Wait, sorry.
Oh, okay. Good work.
I didn't get a reason why you entered executive session.
Yes,
was it a
thank you.
personnel thing?
And I didn't specify one. It was personnel.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for catching that. Motion to adjourn, please.
So made.
Thank you, Tim. Second?
So made. So second.
Thank you, Thomas. Moved by Tim, seconded by Thomas, that we adjourn our February 19th meeting. I want to just read one thing that I constantly am reminded of. This is a quote from former slave owner Thomas Jefferson. Let me find it. I hold that a little rebellion now and then is a good thing, and is necessary in the political world as storms in the physical. And I think that what we just experienced with the community and through this process, and now with the principals, is a perfect example of that. And it's healthy, and it's the way things should work. So we're doing good. Thank you all. Good night. Oh, we need to vote to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
That's enough. Okay. Good night.